I'm Nick Schiffer and I own NS Builders. I get to work with a team of wildly talented craftsmen building and renovating some of the coolest homes in Boston.
So we just got final approval on this small bathroom vanity for a bathroom renovation that we're doing on Calm Ave. I'm now going to break down the box sizes to send out to our CNC and also our lumber material needs and send one of the guys to go pick that up.
I'm gonna turn around because Ken's standing outside. Because I don't have a list from him yet. So we're on our way to our local plywood supplier to grab some plywood for the vanity we're about to build.
And this is actually not for one of our projects. Nick is working on this condo on Calm Ave. A lot of these buildings have multiple homes in it, and the homeowners downstairs took a liking to us, asked us to help them with some work, do a little refresh to their bathroom. So we're gonna knock out a killer vanity.
We'll go inside, grab the paperwork that Ken called in for the order, hand it off to one of these guys in the fork truck, and they'll load us up. So we didn't pull the one on top because a lot of times they band them and you get rolls on the corners and the edges, and they get beat up a little bit more than the next sheet down. So we like to choose the second one at least if it looks good. So we're waiting on a piece of 3/8 white oak MDF. We're gonna be a little bit more selective with that piece because it's gonna become the center panel on the doors. So we're gonna make sure that the flitches are nice and wide. It's got a good appearance, doesn't have any kind of defects to it or anything like that. So not gonna be able to be too selective. I think it's got like 6 sheets there. Those flitches seem tight. 48.5 anyways, right?
I think so, yeah.
We got what we needed. Of course, the one piece we needed to be selective about, there were only 4 of, so we picked the best one out of the 4. Looks good though, we'll be able to use it. Off to the lumber yard now. Hello.
Hey James, the general manager of the lumberyard asked that we do not film at their location.
See, here's the problem, right? We go to do these videos, and everywhere we go is doing something that they've never done before. Well, I've showed up. So
We start with rough sawn lumber that allows us to maintain control and quality as well as yield, giving us a better end result.
So we just grabbed this lumber for the vanity project we're working on. So what we're looking for when we're picking lumber is straightness of both the board, linear, and also horizontally. So you want to make sure it's not cupped or warped or twisted. We'll check it for any sapwood. The block plane, as you can see, you're gonna have a little bit on this end, but it tails off. So the majority of this board is gonna still work for us. There's all this in here. It's nice and golden toned. You can see the color variation. So that's what we're looking for in a board. We prefer it rough. We're able to actually square up our edges and get our faces flat and make sure that we're not relying on somebody else to do that for us.
Once we get our rough sawn lumber here in the shop, we allow it to acclimate here for several days. One of the reasons that we're doing this is a lot of these lumber yards aren't temperature controlled, and our shop is. So we allow the wood to acclimate to our shop conditions, which will be more like the interior of someone's home. This reduces the chances of cupping, warping, or twisting, as well as expansion and contraction. Now that our rough sawn material is acclimated, we're going to break it down into more manageable pieces and begin our milling process. And we'll start over at the miter saw. The reason we cut it into more manageable pieces is it allows us to have better control over our yield and quality of pieces. From there, we will begin on the jointer, using a combination of the jointer and table saw to make pieces even more manageable, and then ultimately bringing it over to our planer, where we will mill it to final thickness.
What started as, I think, a paint grade vanity turned into a really cool rift white oak vanity. What I love about when we're getting into veneered wood and just wood grain material is the thought and the layout process that goes into grain matching. Guys are always like super detailed on making sure that the rail and style match up with the rail and style next to it and that grain flows through.
So right now I'm taking a look through our boards, looking at what should be our faces and what's our backs. You know, looking for things like this that may be imperfections that we don't want to see on the face. Something I need to keep in mind while doing this is that several of our rails and stiles are going to be grain matched, so I'll need to yield 2 boards out of each piece in those cases. As I'm going through this process, I make sure to very clearly label every piece that comes off so there's no confusion later on down the road. So our finished rail and stile size is going to be 2.5 inches. I'm going to cut my boards a little bit wider than that so I can run them through the planer, clean them up, and then trim them later and still end up with a 2.5 inch yield. At the same time we begin our milling process, we're able to send case construction over to our CNC operator where he will cut all of our boxes for us. One of the reasons we're doing that is we're a smaller shop. We don't necessarily have the time and manpower to cut box after box. Plus, they're able to cut it much faster and use hidden mortise and tenon joinery, as well as pre-drill any holes that we may need in the cabinetry. Thank you.
We're going to throw them through the edge bander before we assemble them, give them a nice clean look. Being part of the install crew, I spend most of my time on the job, but I really like coming here in the shop and being part of building and fabrication. I want to know how something was built. It helps me on the install side of things, so I want to be a part of everything.
So our shop is kind of broken up into 2 teams. We have the install team, which consists of Zach and James. They're handling all the install side of things. And then the shop team consists of myself and Ian. There is a lot of overlap between the 2 teams. When the field guys aren't out installing, they're here in the shop helping us fabricate. That way, as demand is needed, any of us can kind of step in or out of each of these positions.
So when we're done building our boxes, we always take these cleats, we staple them to the bottom so we can throw them on the floor and slide them around without damaging edge banding or the cabinets. That's how we do the bases. On the uppers, we put them on the top, so once they're installed, you can't see any staple holes on the bottom of the cabinet.
When it comes to door construction on a wood grade vanity such as this one, layout is absolutely crucial for our grain matching.
We're using rift cut white oak, so it's very noticeable when the grain doesn't match up. So what we're going to do for our end panel, we'll take it to the table saw and do a couple of 45-degree miter cuts. And glue up a nice return so our grain matches across all the faces. We did our standard tape glue up for a miter return piece with some packing tape and some painter's tape to keep it tight. Once that's set up, we'll plane the face flat again. And now you can see we have nice rift grain going right across to the front face, and that will continue into the rest of our door panels. So one thing that's very important is making sure all the parts are nice and square. Otherwise, you're making problems for yourself down the road. You can start to see it come together where across the drawer front rails and stiles, all the grain blends back together. So when the cabinet's all closed up, everything matches up nicely. We have grain running continuous across all these drawer fronts. We have it going across the door to the drawer front. It will also wrap around this corner to the end panel and onto our right side scribe as well.
Once we have all the pieces cut to size, we're running the cope and stick over the shaper.
A shaper is basically a standalone router table, but on steroids. It uses a much larger cutter head, has a much more powerful motor, and it gives us a lot more control and consistency when it comes to our joinery cuts. I'm starting with the tenons. That will be cut into the rail parts of our doors and drawer fronts. Now that we have all of our tenons cut on all of our pieces, we're going to change the cutter heads on the shaper and start cutting all of our dados for panels, and those also act as the mortises to fit these tenons. When using the shaper, it's really important to note that it's one of the more dangerous tools in the shop. When accidents do occur on it, they tend to be really bad. So at all times, we try to keep our hands as far away from the blade as possible. On the tenon cuts, you saw we use the cross-cut sled. On the dado cuts, we like to use our power feeder attachment here, and that gives us a nice consistent run past the blade while keeping our hands very safe distance from it. And we're ready to start cutting all of our dado joinery. You can see that our fit is nice and snug. Now that we've cut all of our joinery, we'll go back and mill down that mitered return piece. That will be the front of our end panel, and catch him up with the rest of these guys. When Ken walks into the shop and I find him just staring at me, it's usually a little more unnerving because his angry face and messing with you face are very similar.
I never know if he's serious or not because he's always got the same silly smirk on his face. I don't know if I did something right or if I messed up until he actually talks. But there's usually like 30 seconds of him just looking at everybody with a smirk on his face.
Ken's definitely not as intimidating as Nick, even though he wants to be.
Now we're cutting out our panels for our shaker doors. They'll be out of rift-sawn white oak plywood. So we start with a rough size. It's about as large as our overall dimension. And then I will progressively cut the doors and the drawer fronts, respectively, out of those pieces. So then once all the doors are put in place, the grain will run continuously across all of the faces. Most door manufacturers would be perfectly content to glue up these doors and panels now. Here at NSB, we take it one step further and we add dominoes to every tenon and mortise, just for added strength and stability over time with seasonal shifts, just to keep all of our joints tight and our doors square.
We pre-sand all of our panels, as well as the interior edges of all of our door parts. This allows us to achieve a much cleaner sanding. We also take the extra step to pre-prime the edge of our panel. In this case, we're just using a clear sealer. If there's any expansion and contraction in the door, you won't see an unfinished seam around the edge. It also helps to protect the panel in case there's any moisture that finds its way in.
We build the strongest doors. We've ordered doors, we've broken doors, we've smashed stuff off the edge. We build the strongest doors. And we've been told that it's overkill, doesn't matter, that's how we want to do it, that's how we're going to build them.
When assembling our doors, to keep the panels from rattling down the road, we like to use this 3/8 by 3/8 neoprene sealant, and we'll cut that into small rectangles and insert them right into our dados. And that will keep a little bit of pressure on all sides of the panels, and it'll keep it from knocking around loosely in the door assemblies. Then we'll grab our dominoes and get these inserted into the mortises. You want to make sure that those are all the way down so that they don't keep us from assembling the rest of the door. And this is where the labeling starts to really help. So you want to glue your shoulders and the edges of the mortise. And put a decent amount of glue into this top domino hole to make it easy to put together. You don't have to worry about spreading the glue out because putting the joint together spreads the glue. And if you get squeeze out, you know you had enough. Also labeled the edges of my panels, so I know what orientation to keep those in.
It's also important to note that we do not glue our panels in place. They are completely free floating.
With style. Now we want to make sure that our rails are flush. Same with the bottom. And then we grab a pipe clamp and we snug that up. Snug up that last clamp. Last step is to always measure the inside corners. Both your measurements are the same, your door is square. And then we're all set. And I'll scrape that glue once it sets up a little bit and gets a little more cooperative. I think you're my good luck charm, Doug.
When a mistake is made, if the mistake's a clear-cut error, like a piece being miscut, we'll just go straight into refabricating that piece. If the mistake is a larger issue, we'll brainstorm as a team to kind of figure out what's the best solution to fixing that mistake is. Oftentimes, these are more involved and larger pieces or parts that need to be refabricated. Those decisions aren't always easy to make, but at the end of the day, it just really comes down to what's the right thing to do.
Just under an 1/8. Dead square.
Once all our doors are assembled, we'll begin the sanding process. This starts with running each door through the time saver to remove any excess glue or uneven joinery evenly and quickly. We make all of our doors slightly oversized, so at this point we can go ahead and lay out all of our doors on the actual case and trim each one to exactly where it needs to be.
Before I cut my doors, I'm gonna run one edge on the planer to square up my piece. That way I have a nice flat edge to go off of. What you wanna make sure of is that you're taking an equal amount off of both sides. You don't wanna lose your grain match pattern on either style.
We will get a little tear out doing this, but the door is oversized. So we will clean up that edge once we cut it to our proper width.
We do have one door on this cabinet, so we're gonna head over to the blue machine and put some holes in it for hinges.
We'll then completely assemble the vanity to make sure everything is correct, make any adjustments necessary before we begin our final sanding.
These are the lamellos. There's a male and a female end. One goes in the case, one goes in the filler. And they snap together just like that.
Before anything leaves the shop, we dry fit everything 100% to make sure that there are no mistakes or fitment issues. So we're just gonna go ahead and get that process started. So we're gonna add another detail to this vanity. We're actually gonna take a kerf and run it at the same plane here across the end panel and the filler panel on that side, just to give it a little bit of separation and a little more depth. After sanding, it is off to the finisher.
Sanded panel versus a panel that still has the poly on it. So we're gonna sand the faces and the edges. What we're looking for is to make sure we get any of the cross grain scratches out. We'll be using that 150 grit just to make sure that no swirl marks are left when we're done and we get a nice clean finish. We're gonna go around and sand all the edges, get any burn marks that are in there out. After we're done sanding the edges, we're just gonna roll them over a little bit, make sure there's no sharp edges on anything that could cut somebody. It also allows the finish to hold better on a little bit of a rounded edge than a sharp point.
Finishing is so important to us, and that's really why we built this relationship with our finisher. But that doesn't mean that we just drop off a product and ask them to make us look good. We need to look good going in there. And that's why we spend all that time with running the stuff through the time saver to get, everything flushed out. Then the guys are detailing this with a hand orbital all the way down to taking a piece of sandpaper and breaking that edge by hand. That's where that hand build really comes into play, and we're delivering a product that is superior, showing up to our finisher, and they're just making us look great. We're walking in there looking great, they're just topping it off. And that's really important to us, and that's again why we stick to building all this stuff in-house, and even something as small as a vanity or all the way up to a kitchen. We'd like to do this for our construction projects, but listen, we're not gonna say no to the right project, especially a cool client like the one we're dealing with on this job.